Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here for the first, second, or third time with Marc Givler. Marc, how's it going?
It's going very well. If you're an Ohio State coach right now on the recruiting trail, Buckeyes are rolling.
Yeah, and we're here for a breaking news edition of the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. Linebacker CJ Sanna from Olentangy and Lewis Center, Ohio, has committed to Ohio State. So we wanted to bring Marc on to tell us more about him. 6'3", 225, Marc. And as I'm watching his highlights, I noticed the fact that he is a middle linebacker wearing number 45.
Clearly the next Andy Katzenmoyer. He's a guy who really only jumped onto the radar this past season, his junior season. This was a guy who was not super heavily recruited before then, but had a tremendous junior year. He's got great size. He can run. He's a multi-sport athlete, which I think everyone around the program at Ohio State really loves. They love guys who can kind of have different athletic traits, different skill sets. And so this is a really important get for them. They've lost a couple of in-state guys in this cycle for various reasons. They lost his teammate, Caden Gebhardt, to Clemson. And I think they lost recently. Storm Miller committed Texas A&M kind of out of left field. So I think getting this was important. I think it's been almost a telling of the story after the fact versus kind of reading the clues up to the commitment. I think as we start to see things play out, we're starting to realize, they don't get Caden Gebhardt, and then Blaine Bradford commits and Bralan Womack's coming in, and they're arguably the leader for Bralan Womack right now, and they're in on some other big name safeties. I think we're seeing kind of similar thing at linebacker where it's so Storm Miller goes somewhere else, but now Santa's in, and Cincere Johnson remains kind of their top in-state guy at linebacker, and all three of those guys are potential Mikes. And Kevin Noon and I kind of talked about this on a recent Skull Session podcast, which was we couldn't pinpoint which Ohio linebacker wasn't going to end up at Ohio State. So we kind of had them leading for all of them, but we kind of knew one of them wouldn't. We knew there were only going to be so many Mike linebackers in this class, and we just kind of didn't know how the domino effect was going to play. And I think we're starting to see that.
I do remember seeing Storm Miller and Cincere Johnson last June. I don't remember, and maybe I wouldn't have even known to look for CJ Sanna last June at camp for Ohio State. I do find it interesting. He's I think 24/7 ranks him the number 6 linebacker in Ohio, but clearly James Laurinaitis likes him a lot better than that. And I'm always interested to watch James Laurinaitis offer these 3-star linebackers, which he, famously once was. And it's similar to this year when you talk to him about TJ Alford or Riley Pettyjohn. He's also to remind you, Eli Lee is here as well. So I think right now he's built up some credibility on his eye and the ability to develop. And I'll trust him on this one for sure.
Yeah, look, he's got a really good look at CJ. He's got a really good look at all these guys via camps, via film, via, just being local and having a lot of knowledge of the local programs and local coaches. And so he's done his homework on these guys, Santa especially. So yeah, you trust him. And I'm not trying to not mention other recruiting sites. I just don't remember which ones, but I apologize in advance. I know someone got him 4 and someone's got him 3. Maybe it's On 3 has him. Someone's got him a 4. So there's a little bit of varying opinion on there. And whether that's varying opinion or whether that's one site maybe seeing more of him than another site has had a chance to see is also kind of yet to be determined. He's got a lot of good measurables. And again, for someone who I don't think has a ton of playing experience, it's not like he's been he was a freshman starter at linebacker, and he's just played, he got 50 high school games under his belt at varsity. For someone who's still fairly early in his development, I think there's some athletic upside there. So, and again, he's a multi-sport athlete, which I know they really enjoy, they really like about him. So, interesting pickup for me. I like it. Again, for me, and I think Ohio State would agree with this. I think Cincere Johnson has kind of emerged the past 6 to 8 months as the must-have linebacker in this class, and they're going to recruit these other guys. They wanted CJ obviously very much, but I think that's kind of as we see the domino effect kind of play out, it does look like it's going to be Sanna and Cincere Johnson because, spoiler alert, I don't have Cincere Johnson putting a crack in the Glenville pipeline.
There you go. Yeah, and just so people know, as Marc said, Cincere Johnson from Glenville, kind of a smaller, everybody's smaller than Arvell Reese, like a smaller Arvell Reese, but still 6'3", 230. Like, he's not small. It's just Arvell Reese is a large linebacker, a 6'4", 240. And Cincere Johnson we've seen for a while. So if they do land Cincere Johnson, are they then done at linebacker? And when I say done at linebacker, does that also include Simeon Caldwell?
Yeah, so I think Simeon Caldwell's an extremely versatile, smart player. He has worked out at camps as a linebacker at times in the past. I was at a camp in Florida last year. He worked out that day at linebacker. Took me a few minutes to spot him because I was expecting him with the safeties, and he worked out at linebacker. So he's got experience playing linebacker. I think that's just a matter of, okay, how much weight do you put on and how does that impact your ability to run? Mm-hmm. So I think he's certainly a possibility as an outside linebacker. They've generally recruited him as a safety, but I think everyone knows there's a chance there. And I think the most important thing is Simeon knows that's a possibility. We talked to him on Southern Swing last year, and he even said it then. He's like, look, I might be a linebacker. I don't know yet. I don't care. I just want to play football. So he was very upfront that he didn't care. He wants to play football. He wants to be on the field. Whatever's going to help him do that, he's all about. So I think that's actually the key here, is not so much what Ohio State thinks or what his body does, is just his mindset. Because if his body is going to do whatever his body's going to do, but if his mind isn't prepared for that possibility, if he doesn't approach that with an open mind or a positive attitude, it's not going to matter. So I think that's the key.
Yeah, and then he was at June camp last year as well and said the same thing. He's like, whether it's linebacker, defensive back, safety, receiver, whatever, I play football. And that's the kind of attitude you always want to have. And it's interesting because, you look at him, he's like a decent sized safety, and I think one site will list him as 6'3", 185, another is like a 6'2", 200. So he's not Sonny Styles in terms of this guy will only play safety for a certain point, and if you never let him play safety, that's okay. Like there's a path where you can see Simeon Caldwell playing safety and staying a safety size, but they do have the experience of, well, you can start out your career at safety, or we've heard Matt Patricia quite a bit recently saying big nickel on talking about his defense, and maybe there's this Sonny Styles path now for somebody like a Simeon Caldwell.
Yeah, it's not as black and white as it was with Sonny, where it's like I'd come on the podcast when Sonny was in high school. I was like, I don't care where they start him. I don't care where they're recruiting him to play. There's not a chance on earth this kid's staying at safety, like long term. I don't feel that way about Caldwell.
Right.
I feel like there is a path for him to play safety, probably more of a strong safety than a free safety, but he's a guy who does have the measurables to stay at safety if that's where they deem he's the best fit for their defense. But yeah, Matt Patricia, as throwing out a term, big nickel is interesting. I do think, in today's game, there's so much about matchups, and just how there's not, who knows? In 10 years, the power run game may come back like in vogue, and now everyone goes like double tight, like old school, like 90s Wisconsin. But for now, it's like, okay, how many safeties and linebackers do we have that can be like all situational players? I think that's the key is, when teams go 2 tight ends, or if they've got bigger receivers, how do we match up? If teams are going to go 4 and 5 wide, how do we match up with that without having to like sprint different personnel on the field? Because a lot of teams want to play with pace that do that, and you're not always going to be able to get those matchups and perfect matchups. So having players like Simeon Caldwell, and I would throw someone like Jordan Hancock in this category, exactly, of players who can excel in different situations and not be kind of targets, I guess, for the opposing offense as far as, getting into certain matchups are highly valuable.
And we've tried to do our best to explain how important Jordan Hancock and Caleb Downs were to the defense last year and allowing them to do whatever they wanted. Those two guys allowed them to do all kinds of different things because Caleb Downs could come down and play like a second middle linebacker while Jordan Hancock would go back and play deep safety. Those two allowed them to do a lot. Now they've got Caleb Downs back. Spoiler report, Caleb Downs and Simeon Caldwell will never play together in college. We know that, but there's proof of concept. But the last thing for me, and I know this is a CJ Sanna, breaking news. How does the commitment of Caldwell and also Bradford impact Bralan Womack? And does it?
I don't think it does. I think, again, if you look at a couple things here, if you look at what Ohio State's done defensively with being basically a base nickel, I think there's plenty of opportunity to get all three of those guys on the field together. I don't think Caldwell's commitment was a surprise to anybody.
Right.
I think the moment, and fair or not, I think the moment, we kind of put that out there last year, like, hey, this is Tim Walton's nephew. I think everyone just kind of assumed he was going to end up here. Whether that was fair or not, I don't know. But so I think this has not been a big secret. I'm actually of the opinion that Bradford could help with Womack. I think those guys would operate very similarly, with Womack kind of being the Caleb Downs to Bradford's Lathan Ransom. So I don't think there's any friction there. And if you look at kind of their roster right now at safety, they have some young guys that I think they like. I don't look at it as a situation where it's like the depth chart is so overwhelming for a young player. If you're a highly recruited safety, I think there's going to be some opportunities there to come in and play early. So I actually don't think this hurts them at all. And in fact, if I know Simeon Caldwell as well as I think I do, he's the type of kid who would never, who would recruit someone like Womack. Like, he would actually recruit guys to come in and compete. He would not be the type of kid who kind of wants to be the only safety or the only this in the class. And I don't care if we get Bralan Womack. No, he'll be recruiting Bralan Womack as hard as anybody. It's just the type of kid he is. So.
Will he recruit any defensive linemen in this class? That's a story for another day. That is,
maybe this won't be maybe D-line, but I think one guy to watch there is, they're not right next door to each other, but they're in the same part of the country. And I know they've done national camps and things like that. I think you're going to see a lot of attention now with kind of the commitments they have and what they're starting to build defensively. Look for a lot of attention to go to Tyler Atkinson now. Because obviously Ohio State will hold a spot for Cincere Johnson, but Cincere Johnson is not the same type of player, or CJ Sanna, or they're not the same type of player as Tyler Atkinson. Is a very different type of player, very dynamic edge type of player. And I think you're going to see a lot of recruiting attention, obviously the coaching staff, of course, but I think you're going to see a lot of these new defensive commits as they start to build the base of this defense for this class. I think Tyler Atkinson's going to be a very, very big target for them.
Is he Buford?
No, he's at Grayson.
Okay. All right.
Which is another just monster down there. But on your defensive line, though, the other guy down there, Deuce Gerald's, is down there, also one of the powerhouse schools down there at Collins Hill, which is where Travis Hunter went. So Deuce Gerald's for defensive line will be another big target there. So yes, I think they're gonna. I boldly predict they will sign a couple defensive linemen in this recruiting class. I do predict that.
You heard it here first. Must credit Marc Givler of Buckeye Huddle. So that'll do it. Just wanted to drop in and get you guys up to speed on the latest with the commitments and the basically the defensive side of the Ohio State recruiting class in 2026 right now. So there you go. If you're watching on YouTube, please go ahead and hit the thumbs up. We would appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel if you've not yet done so. Hit the bell to be notified when we drop videos like this or go live. And of course, you can always find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Sign up now. Check us out there on the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. Would love to have you there. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.